All right, let's get into the Daniel Jones kind of recap of 2019, and we kind of use this, Jeff. The reason I wanted to do this is to kind of track him this year now and see what we should pay attention to see where he needs to get better and improve. Now, some of the stuff we've already talked about in different segments on the show, so that stuff will kind of go past a little bit quickly. Other stuff will go a little bit more in depth in. I have a million numbers here. I don't want to give you all of them because I'll overload you.
Yeah, that stat sheet you gave me was...
No,
woo.
It's something. So we're going to try to give you the large themes here without overloading you with numbers and just kind of try to explain the whys, why it's important, and those sorts of things. And, Jeff, one thing that we had talked about previously on the show, this will be one of those we go through quickly, is the first thing I looked at was play-action pass with Daniel Jones. And I kind of broke down what he did, type of throw, situation, type of drop back, and all those sorts of things. So we're going to start play-action passing, and he was actually a pretty good play-action passer last year, but the difference between his ability in shotgun versus under center was stark. In shotgun, he had a quarterback rating of 155, under center of just 58. Now, we kind of talked about this prior, and he only had play-action passes under center in college with no RPO action 63 times in 3 years. So it's something he wasn't asked to do a lot. And that can be an adjustment for a young quarterback because when you're doing play action from under center, you're turning your back to the defense. You have to get your head back around, quickly decode what happened while your back was turned, and make a decision. And for Daniel Jones, who hadn't done it a whole lot, that's something that he struggled with as a rookie.
Well, because he didn't do a lot of it at college.
Yeah.
So I feel like, we're talking about in the segueing into his second year and what he can learn and how he can get better. I think it's only going to get better for him with that because more importantly, he was learning how to do it because he hadn't done it, taken from under center now. The other thing is, you do take your eyes off of the defense a little bit, but, over time, I feel like you can kind of adapt more to the situation by reps and getting used to it. Now, what kind of if you look at Dallas and you look at kind of the offense that they play a lot, they do a lot of play action. Okay. So this is something that he's going to have to get better at. And whether it will be out of shotgun or from underneath, I don't know. But again, it all comes back to John, and you broke it down pretty good. But, whatever you do well, let's do it even better.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, if you run play action for him out of shotgun, guys,
he's really good.
Rated passer in the league in terms of running play action at a shotgun. So he was fantastic. He was great in yards per attempt, number one in the league. 16 yards per attempt, play action out of shotgun. The ball got out quickly, average depth of target. All those things were just, off the charts for him. So if the Giants can try to focus on some of that stuff, and, Saquon Barkley ran out of shotgun a ton at Penn State. It's not like he's not used to doing that. Now, Paul Dottino might have a heart attack running out of shotgun all the time, but it's something that both Saquon Barkley has been good at in the past, and Daniel Jones was certainly excellent at in year number one.
Yeah, and I think that if it's me, I've got to learn to be better out of under center and play action because I want to set it up.
Yeah, I agree.
If you're going to run the football, like we talked a little bit about this at the beginning of the show and how the Giants are going to probably really depend on that running game. When you look at what they're doing with the offensive line and with Saquon, okay? So if you don't have the ability to go under center and hand the ball off because you're just not good at play action, then you're not going to be very good at running you know what I'm saying? I want to be able to present a problem where that play action really works because if I'm under center and I do fake the handoff, and our running game is so well from under center that there's the element of surprise there and the play action will work. That's why I want him to do it better.
Yeah, and play action should create some easy completions too because you're putting the defense in a bind, you're moving guys around, so you can create some big plays down the field too. So if Daniel Jones can improve with his play action under center, it'll make his overall numbers
and one other
much,
thing,
much
John,
better.
From under center, you can run some RPOs from under center. Not everything is done out of shotgun. So what it does is it further improves your selection of plays by being able to be successful going underneath or from shotgun. If you're not good at one and better at the other, the team is going to pick that up. So you want to be consistent at both things that you do there.
No question about it. By the way, RPOs last year, Daniel Jones completed 19 of 23 passes. A lot of short stuff, only 111 yards, but he was very efficient running the RPOs, which is not a surprise given how much he did that in college.
And it's funny, when you look at that play and the design of the RPO, it's not really designed for a big play. It can become a big play, maybe from a running perspective if the quarterback sees something there where he can have the rest of the field to just tuck it down and run. But maybe because, you think about Jason Garrett and how he likes to throw the football down the field. maybe we get some big plays out of that RPO this year.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe you get some downfield threat out of an RPO situation.
Now, one really interesting part of Daniel Jones's game this year, Jeff, and it took a lot of analysis for me to kind of come up with what all these numbers meant, but Daniel Jones last year as a rookie was excellent against pressure. In fact, he rated better. And I'm not talking about overall numbers, because quarterbacks' numbers are never going to be better under pressure than when he's not under pressure. But if in terms of where he ranks among NFL quarterbacks, Daniel Jones was actually ranked higher with his statistics under pressure than he was not under pressure. So it's a very impressive thing for a rookie quarterback. And when you kind of break down everything he did, he got rid of the ball quicker under pressure. The only guys ranked above him were a lot of veterans, like kind of the Drew Breeses, the Matt Ryans, the Tom Bradys. But there were some things where maybe he could buy a little bit more time, because some of the guys that held the ball the longest while under pressure were the guys that were more mobile, right? The Deshaun Watsons, the Patrick Mahomes, guys that can run around a little bit. And I think one of the strengths of Daniel Jones's game under pressure is that he's willing to stand in the pocket, deliver the ball, and take a hit, which is something Eli Manning did so much of earlier in his career. But at the same time, if you're willing to stand in the pocket, wait, try to make a play, you risk getting the ball stripped from behind, right? You risk getting hit as you throw it. So I think while this is a great base, and I think for a rookie, it's important to start here and then adjust from here, because I think so many rookies sometimes, Jeff, can be skittish in the pocket under pressure. They panic, they throw it away, they didn't know how to handle it. The fact that Jones is willing to stay in there, face pressure, make throws in the face of pressure from the pocket, it's okay to dial that back. And it's a lot easier to dial that back than to convince a guy to hang in there. So
no question.
I think, maybe he can feel the pressure a little bit better, get rid of it, or avoid pressure to extend the play a little bit better. But overall, it's a great starting point for him as a rookie when he faces pressure.
And if you kind of read some of the tea leaves here, when Daniel Jones has been interviewed this offseason about how great he looks and he put on a little bit of weight and these are all things that he said himself to help him be able to stay in the pocket. He said he put on 8 to 10 pounds of muscle, and that's going to help him in the pocket as far as getting hit. Strength, being able to hold on to the football, being able to absorb a hit with just a little bit more power and strength, so that you can hold on to that football and maybe be able to take a guy that's going to pop you one time. And, where last year you might have taken that pop and dropped the ball, where this time being stronger and more physical presence in the pocket will help you. And so obviously this is something that he looked at and said, hey, this is part of my game that I need to improve on. And by the way, if I can do it physically, getting a little bit stronger and bigger, that'll go a long ways for me too.
And he wasn't impacted by the blitz much either, to be quite honest with you.
He's really good at that.
He handled it well. He maybe held the ball a little bit too long against some blitzes. He turned it over a little bit too much.
Young. Yep.
That's just a young guy thing, though. And then when the processing gets faster, and we're going to touch on that a little bit in the next segment, Jeff, he'll be better against the blitz. But he had a lot of big-time throws against the blitz. And if you look at his stats under pressure, and I talked about it in terms of the rest of the league, just to give a general idea, he was probably around, under pressure, he was ranked, where's the number here, around 15th of 41 quarterbacks in Pro Football Focus grade, 13th in completion percentage, 19th in quarterback rating. So he's in the top, half, third of the league, depending on what stat you want to look at there. But if you look at guys in their first and second year, he's top 3 in the NFL in nearly all those statistics when it comes to dealing with pressure. So he's way ahead of the game as a young quarterback.
But if I believe, and I read it right, it was either in your report or even another one, wasn't he the number 1 pressured quarterback in the National Football League last year?
No, it wasn't that bad.
It wasn't?
It wasn't that bad, no.
Interesting. I thought he got, we know he did get pressured a lot. Here's the other thing about him. And you heard it with Jason Garrett. He loves ball. The guy loves to study. He loves football. He's a smart guy, obviously going to Duke. He is only going to get better at understanding when there's going to be pressure and knowing where his outlets are, right? I mean, he's going to be able to understand, this is my check down when I see this. When I see them go from this cover to this cover, I know that this is my only play. He's going to get much better at that as you go. And Jason Garrett, and, you got to talk about Jerry Shaplensky too. He's the new quarterback coach who came from New England, which, by the way, you remember who the quarterback was up there that he worked under, right? So I think that there's going to be a lot of good coaching going on in that quarterback room, not to mention some of the veterans that are in that quarterback room.
All right, average time to throw, Jeff. And I took a look at this, and we talked about it. He actually got rid of the ball pretty quickly when he was under pressure. He was top 15 in the league. So when he saw pressure, he did a good job of getting rid of the ball, which is important. But I thought a telling stat, if you looked at the amount of time it took Daniel Jones to throw the ball on plays, and this is how I kind of filtered it. And Pro Football Focus, by the way, thank you very much to them for giving me access to all these numbers to allow me to do this. I was able to just look at his plays where there was no pressure, no RPO, and no play action, right? So just straight drop back, no pressure. He was 34th of 35 qualifying quarterbacks in terms of average time to throw, which means only one quarterback held the ball longer than he did when he dropped back. And if you look at just plays where he was in the pocket, he had the longest time to throw of any quarterback in the league. And again, for a rookie quarterback, not a surprise. It's going to take you longer to figure out where you want to go with the ball, right? But I think it goes back to a lot of the issues that he had. And, you take a look at some of these numbers, and Pro Football Focus breaks down very well in terms of, sacks and when they occur. So average time to a pass attempt for him overall was 2.7 seconds, 32nd in the NFL. So a long time to throw the ball. Percent of dropbacks greater than 2.5 seconds, tied for 13th most in the NFL. Sacks incurred on dropbacks greater than 2.5 seconds, 9th most in the NFL. With that said, his average time to a sack of 3.1 seconds was the 7th fastest in the NFL. So I think it's hard to kind of put all these things together, but these were kind of my conclusions, Jeff, that Jones does hold the ball longer than most quarterbacks, and we'll get to this in a second. When he holds the ball longer, he does not play as well. When he does face pressure, he gets sacked quicker than most of the quarterbacks in the league. So he does face pressure quicker than a lot of other quarterbacks. When he stands in the pocket, he can deliver the ball well. Generally speaking, he's somebody that needs to get rid of the ball quicker because when he holds it longer, there are more sacks, more chances at turnovers. He plays poorer, has more turnover-worthy plays. So I think a big key for Jones this year is to get rid of the ball quicker because he plays so much better when it's out fast, and when he holds it, bad things tend to happen, whether it's a sack, an interception. All his passing numbers go down. I can give you the numbers. I think they're boring. Just trust me. They go way down when he holds the ball more than 2.5 seconds. I'll just give it to you real quick, just so the fans get a basic idea of it. Mm-hmm. So when he holds it more than 2.5 seconds, he led the NFL with 22 turnover-worthy plays. When he holds the ball for more than 2.5 seconds, his overall Pro Football Focus drops from 19th when he holds it for less than 2.5 to 35th of 43 quarterbacks when he holds it more than 2.5 seconds. So everything drops when he holds the ball, Jeff, and bad things tend to happen.
Well, yeah, and I think going forward, just understanding, remember, he's going to be learning a new offense. So I think that, he may be up against some of this early on because, you got to, if you've been running an offense for 2, 3, 4, 5, 15 years, something like that, you're going to understand that this is just the way it's going to work on this type of a play. But I think that the evolution of the game and him understanding how fast the game is played at this level, he's going to get better at it. But I also believe that going into a game and when you're dissecting a lot of the stuff that he needs to work on, which is what the coaches do in the offseason, they say, hey, Dan, these are the things we're going to concentrate on now going forward. When you get in a situation like this, what's the first thing you're going to do?
Right.
And they'll tell him, either throw the ball away, okay, or maybe slide just to try to avoid some pressure, but you need to get the football away because you know what? You're in harm's way. You really are.
Yeah.
And now, we all know that an improved offensive line will help the time and how things are going in the pocket. So hopefully that'll be a little bit of a bonus for him too.
No question about it. And then if you look at the number of steps on drops, it kind of mimics the time to throw, right?
Well, sure.
He was one of the best quarterbacks in the league on 3-step drops, 4th in the league in quarterback rating, 4th in the league in yards per attempt. When he got to 5-step drops, he was kind of in the middle of the league. Then when he gets to 7-step drops, he turned into one of the worst quarterbacks in the league. So as he took longer drops and held the ball and held the ball and held the ball, the play deteriorated. And on those plays where he had 7-step drops, Jeff, or held it for more than 3 seconds, plays like that, he made mistakes, but he also made big plays. On 7-step drops, for example, he had the 10th most big-time throws according to Pro Football Focus. So he's always trying to do a little bit too much, right? Like and you like this about a quarterback because it's easier to dial somebody back than to dial them up, where he's always trying to make that play, and that forces him to hold the ball, tries to make him squeeze the ball in some places. And sometimes it's okay to check it down. It's okay to get rid of the ball quicker. It's okay to throw it away and punt. And I think Jones, when, these big plays come in, he's holding it. Sometimes it's better to just, take the easy play, throw it away, do what you got to do, and kind of just move on and not try to do too much, which is what happens when he tries to do these big 7-step drops or hold the ball too long.
Well, I could tell you from just understanding that when you do something for a long time and then you're trying to correct it or just improve in it, it takes a lot of repetition, a lot of reps to get back to being comfortable with what they're trying to teach you. And what I'm saying is that when you've been doing something for so long, and you've been throwing at a level like Daniel Jones did in college, where he was a pretty good quarterback. Then all of a sudden you get to the pros, and Pat Shurmur last year is telling you you need to do this. It's very uncomfortable. So you have to start learning it. It's just, you have to have like 5,000, 10,000 reps until it becomes really just kind of like you're walking in your sleep. I mean, it's easy, so that's going to come with practice. Unfortunately, they haven't had a lot of that. So I feel like we might see a little bit of this early in the season, John. But you know what? We're going to be able to go back and look at it and say, hey, we talked about this when we talked about 5-step and 7-step drops. I believe that an improved offensive line on a 7-step drop will help him tremendously because he does have a big arm and he does have a propensity to make big plays from that 7-step drop. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited about Jason Garrett offense throwing the ball down the field to a Darius Slayton as long as he can get protection in that 7-man drop.
And we've talked about this before.
Or 7-step drop, excuse me.
No question. And we talked about this before, Jeff. Better against man than zone, which makes sense. Against man, you kind of identify what's there. Mm-hmm. You pick out your mismatch, you go attack it. He was good at that. He was in the top half of the league in terms of a lot of the major stats, PFF grade, quarterback rating, completion percentage against man. Against zone, he was in the bottom quartile. And this goes back to something else, Jeff, which is processing time, right? When you're watching that zone and, guys can move around, you're trying to figure out exactly what's happening. But like with a lot of things you're talking about, that's just going to improve the more and more you see opposing defenses, the faster you're going to be able to process and the better he's going to handle some of these more complicated zone defenses.
Yeah, and the thing with zone is they disguise them. And, you see how these interceptions happen where all of a sudden you just like, where did that come from? Well, that's just a good play by the defense. And it's just, a lot of times these quarterbacks are staring down their receivers. Young guys do. And they're not looking out for that linebacker who's in the throwing lane, and just all of a sudden he just steps there, and it's like, oh man, there's a pick. And sometimes that's pick 6, So I think that the zone defense causes you a little bit more problems than the man because you understand there's a guy on a guy, and you're going to pick out the weaker matchup and go with that one.
Yeah, and the numbers also say, Jeff, he's a very aggressive quarterback. And
I like that.
Yeah, and I think this, again, you'd rather start there and dial somebody back, right, than have to push them into being more aggressive. And, it's not necessarily the throwing down the field part, because I think, you look at some of the numbers, he could probably go to throw down the field a little bit more. He's in the 50th percentile or so in terms of number of passes down the field. But where the aggressiveness really shows up, Jeff, is that he had the 16th most throws in the NFL into tight coverage, and he had the 3rd most passes that resulted in contested catches between the wide receiver and the cornerback. So I think sometimes, and I talked about being over-aggressive, right? There's no point in trying to squeeze in like a 6-yard pass between 3 defenders because the benefit doesn't outweigh the risk. The risk of that getting deflected or intercepted is too much to risk for a minimal game. So I think Jones has to maybe do a little bit of a better job figuring out which one of these risks and tight windows are worth throwing into. You know what I mean?
And it's what we talked about a little bit earlier is, decision making. Jason Garrett telling him, listen, this is going to be a tight throw, all right, but we can't afford a turnover here. So in this situation, I know it's processing, but if you get in a situation where you're going to need to make a tight throw, I still want you to be aggressive, but you also got to understand where we are in the juncture of the game.
Yep.
Okay, so early on in the game, if you want to take that chance, that's fine. But late in the game, when we're up down a touchdown or up a touchdown, whatever it is, where it's a tight game, I need you to throw that ball and we'll just live for another play. And that just that's just practice. That's just experience. Eli was so good at that. just taking a look at something and he didn't like it. He'd either check out of the play, okay, when it was happening, he just threw it away. Threw it away, buy some time, threw it in the dark. How many times you see him throw things at people's feet? That's one of those things where it's just not going to work, and he's just going to throw it away.
Yeah, and he did have a lot of first down and first quarter turnovers, which you really don't want to see because those are the points of the game where it's early.
Well, especially first
12 of his 21, I believe, interceptions or dropped interceptions came in the first half on either first or second down.
Yeah.
So that's too many.
And it's funny because mostly those are running downs, right? So when you're throwing interceptions on those types of plays on first and second down, that goes back to me is like, okay, listen, let's talk about this. Why are we making this mistake? And that's what you do. John, I can't tell you how many times, after a game you go into your meetings and you're probably wondering, people are like, what do you guys watch? Well, we've already know who won the game, but we're just watching ourselves and we're doing situational stuff. Why did you do this on this down? Or why, when you were backed up punting wise, I'm talking about this, there's why you're asking the question, why? And then how do I improve on it? So then you go and work on it. Okay, you get in situations in practice where you put yourself in those situations. A minute and a half left in the game. I'm in the back of the end zone. What am I thinking about? We're up by 2 points. What am I supposed to do here? Rather than just catch it and kick it, you gotta get a good kick. You gotta eliminate a return, and then you're gonna put your defense on there to win the game. So there's types of things and this is why football is such a complicated game, and it takes a lot. That's why you only play them once a week.
Yeah. And look, folks, we're going to go long today. I want to make sure we get through this full rundown with Jeff here, and then we'll post it all up later on YouTube as well if you want to go, check out the different parts of the show. I took a look at his deep ball stats, Jeff, which were interesting. Overall, his deep ball stats were fine, but it was the splits that were really interesting. When he was throwing deep between the numbers, so kind of towards the middle of the field, he was 9 of 15 for 280 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, 141 quarterback rating. Outside the numbers, he was just 7 of 39 for 218 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 4 picks. Looking at the tape, early in the year, he had a lot of overthrows, kind of over the head and towards the sideline. Later in the year, in some of the bad weather, we saw some underthrows, I thought. I thought he was better on the passes where, you kind of throw more of a line drive. It was either a jump ball or a back shoulder. He had some issue finding the right touch on some of those kind of really kind of loopy over the top type of throws. But if he can convert some of that deep middle accuracy to that deep outside accuracy, he has the chance to be one of the elite deep ball throwers in the league.
Well, and look at we have a healthy target down the middle of the field. You know who that is? That's Evan Ingram. If he can get that ball to him and get some of these big plays like that, I agree with you 100%. The ones the outside of the numbers, that has a lot to do with footwork, and it's not arm strength. It's footwork. It's technique and fundamentals. Because, I know that from just watching quarterbacks and the way that they throw the football and listening to the coaches, how they talk to them, you have to have a foundation when you're throwing outside the numbers. If your footwork is not there, then you rely on your arm. Your arm they're all strong. I mean, every quarterback in the NFL has a strong arm. A lot of them have stronger than others, but the fact is you have to use your lower body to get the ball to that spot on the field where you're going to throw it. And if you're just using your arm, sometimes you're going to underthrow, and that's what happened. You said most of those were underthrown, and that's the case.
Yeah, and then you take a look at the intermediate throws between 10 and 19 yards. And, Jeff, to me, these are the throws where a quarterback really kind of makes their money, right?
Especially if you have weapons that can, make some yak.
Right. And you have 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8. That's when you need to complete that 12-yard pass. So, he ranked in the bottom quarter in a lot of the numbers in this particular stat line. A lot of it had to do with the turnovers. Because you look at the tape, Jeff, he makes some excellent throws with anticipation, especially outside the numbers in this area, on deep outs, on deep comebacks, where he's throwing the ball before the guy's even getting into his break. And you're like, wow, those are some great throws. Then, I'll give you this number. On 80 throws in this range last year, he had 9 turnover-worthy plays. So that's pretty more than 1 out of 10 throws were a potential turnover. That's a problem.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean,
so
what I mean
think,
by pretty good is that's a pretty good clip. I mean, that's turnover worthy. Explain that to the listener.
Yeah, good idea. Thank you for that. So Pro Football Focus basically, instead of just looking at turnovers, they look at turnover worthy plays. So, a pass that hits a receiver in the face, pops up in the air and gets intercepted is not a turnover worthy pass. A pass, however, that hits a defender in the face, they drop it, you count that as a turnover-worthy play. So it tries to determine simply based on the pass or the play if the play should have been a turnover.
Right.
So if you're looking at a 10% turnover-worthy throw clip, and remember, this doesn't count fumbles now. These are just throws. Throws on to players that were between 10 and 19 yards. To have an over 10% rate there, that's too high. And that goes back to the point I made before, right, Jeff? You have to pick your spots here. Where can you squeeze the ball in? Where can't you? And then also just, figure out exactly where the defense is and where you can get the ball safely.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's again, I think this is just all when we're really breaking all this down to a first-year player. A lot of this stuff comes into. This will be a very interesting conversation next year.
Yeah.
To see how, and it's good that you took the time to break this down in a sense that we can look at it next year and see the comparison. And it's going to be eye-dropping to where the improvement is, or maybe the improvement wasn't made.
Yeah.
By looking at these numbers.
And if you look at the short throws, Jeff, he was top 10 in quarterback rating, top 10 in PFF grade. This is in throws from 1 to 9 yards, so he was great in that short range. And again, shorter dropbacks, right? Quicker decisions, get rid of the ball quicker, shorter passes. They all kind of lines up when you look at it logically.
Rhythm.
And then in the red zone, he was the 14th highest rated passer in the NFL in the red zone. That's something that quarterbacks struggle with. There's not a lot of space to
100%.
operate it with. He was the top 3 in first and second year quarterbacks in that area too. So, that's something he excelled at.
And I don't know if you have this on your report or whatever, the turnover-worthy plays inside the red zone is an important statistic for me. I don't know if they do that.
Oh, I could check that for you.
But the fact is that, if you were throwing at a 10% clip in the regular open field stuff, wonder what it is when you get into the red zone, because you hope that really declines, because that's your money zone, right? I mean, you want to be scoring touchdowns down there, which, by the way, I think is a huge goal of this new Giants offense, is in the red zone production. Put some points on the board. They're going to have to, right? Because you figure that their defense is going to be a little bit behind the 8 ball this season.
Yeah, Jeff, I don't have it in terms of red zone specifically, but I do have it in terms of passes between 1 and 9 yards. On 224 pass attempts, only 5 turnover-worthy plays. That's a good rate.
Okay, so there you go.
5 on only 224 pass attempts. That's good.
Between 1 and 9. So if you're on the 10-yard line, all right. So that's the go zone, right? Yeah. Okay. So that I like to see that. Now, if you told me that thing was 12 or 15,
that's a problem.
then we're not putting a lot of balls in the end zone. And I'm a little excited about what this offense will look like in the red zone with with Jason Garrett and his tight ends. You know how he loves to work those tight ends, as we know. I mean, how many touchdown passes did we see Jason Witten catch in a Dallas uniform against the Giants over the years? I mean, it's ridiculous.
All right, let's look at third down, Jeff. As you know, that's a money down. That's where you kind of make your money. And Daniel Jones was good on third downs. 15th in quarterback rating, 11th completion percentage. He had the 7th highest beyond the sticks percentage. That means percentage passes that are targeted past the first down marker, which is kind of as a measure of aggressiveness, right? So he was high in that. And he was top 10 in most third down stats, and he was especially good between 1 and 4 yards, where he was in that top 10 area. Only 2 turnover-worthy plays on third down and 4 or less. Now, it got up a little bit when you went between 5 and 10. And that's in line with everything we've talked about, right? When it's a third and long, you're going to hold the ball a little longer.
Exactly.
But he did do well on third and 10 plus. And what we're seeing here, Jeff, is that he's able to make a lot of really spectacular plays, and you're like, wow, what a throw. But along with those spectacular plays, and we see this on third and long with him, you're seeing too many mistakes. So he just needs to be able to limit some of those mistakes and those turnover-worthy plays, and don't reduce some of those great throws. And that's kind of the balance he's the type of strike here, because that's what we're seeing on these third and longs.
Yeah, and that's decision-making at its best. Those are the things you learn as you get better in the league, understanding that in third and long, the chances of converting are they're not good. And if you have a shot, take it if you think it's a good one. If not, throw it away, tuck it down, put the punt team on, put your defense on. So and I think that young quarterbacks trying to make a mark in the league, trying to just get their team to win, and they're forced into those are rookie mistakes, and they're young. And and he's going to make them this year too. Until you get into those 5th, 6th, 7th years in the league and playing all the time, where the game becomes a little bit more natural to you, you're going to have a propensity to try to rush some of those throws and put them in those tight windows where you shouldn't.
Jeff, yeah, and I think it's important too that, Jason Garrett likes to run the ball on early downs, right? So you get into some of those third and shorts because you have Saquon Barkley. He was really good in those spots. So I think keeping Jones out of those situations will help him too.
100%. And I think if you, like you said, you rely on that running game to get you in manageable third down positions. And if you're, really good between 1 and 4 yards or whatever the number was, it also gives you the opportunity again to still run the football there, and set up some play action.
Yeah, right.
And
you run play action and go deep for if you want.
Yeah. And and listen, I know that in the quarterback room and in games, the quarterbacks and offensive coordinators, they want to take their shots. Right? The game just isn't as fun if you're not going to be able to throw the football down the field. So there's times when you want to take your shots. And there's certain situations that the defense gives you that all of a sudden, just a light bulb goes off and says, hello, this is what we looked at all week. There it is. And I'll give you one, for example, and it wasn't really even a big shot. It was a touchdown pass to Plaxico Burress in the Super Bowl. They practiced that play all week. They knew it was going to come sooner or later, and lo and behold, it came on that play. They didn't run it all week. They didn't run it all game. That was the only time they threw it. They knew it was going to go. So, but then there's also times when you think you want to take that shot, but you got to understand the situation of the game, where you are at in the score, and how you're winning or losing dictates that throw.
Jeff, and I looked at clutch situations too. So basically 2-minute drills and close games fourth quarter.
Yep.
And we saw the same type of thing plague Jones that plagued him on third and longs when he 7-step drops. Because why? He feels like he has to make plays in those situations, right? So I think the common theme we're seeing when he thinks he has to do too much on his own, some of the bad habits tend to come to the forefront a little bit.
Let me tell you, and this is such a good analogy because I have, for so long when I was playing, later when I was on a lot of bad teams.
The Cardinals,
so,
yes.
I mean, I was on a lot of bad teams where I felt like I had to make a big play with my leg and, push the defense back because we just, we're going to lose the game if we're just every time we give the team the ball, they're going to score with a short field. So I would try to do too much for so long until finally I realized that I'm not going to be able to succeed by doing this. I just got to do something really well, and that is the directional kicking part of it. So rather than trying to kick the ball 5 seconds and 70 yards, kick it 4.5 seconds and 45 yards and do that well. That's the same thing with quarterbacking. Same thing with running backs. Same thing with everything in football. You try to do something really good and stick with it rather than try to do everything really well. It's never going to work.
No question about it. Also took a look at accuracy, Jeff. And he's really good, Daniel Jones, at avoiding uncatchable passes. He was in the top half of the league in that. But one area where he can get a lot better, Pro Football Focus does a nice job of, figuring out if a pass is super precisely accurate, just plain accurate. They call it catchable but inaccurate. So it's on the body, but the receiver has to go through a lot of effort to make the play. And then you have inaccurate throws, which are uncatchable, right?
Yeah,
so where Daniel Jones, again, he was good at avoiding the uncatchable ones. Where he needs to get a little bit better, he was ranked very high in the league in terms of inaccurate balls that were catchable. And if you go back, remember I gave you the number where
that means he's open and he should have thrown the ball, but he didn't?
No, that means he throws it. The receiver can catch it, but it's not in stride. It's not right to his hands. It's not right in his chest. So the receiver might have to jump for it.
Okay.
He might have to go low to get it and dive for it, things like that. And I think when we talked about, how he ranked very high in the number of contested catches on passes that he made result in contested catches, I think it probably comes back to this number a little bit, right? Because if you're not hitting the guy perfectly in stride and it's off the body or a little bit behind him or a little bit high, that gives the defense a chance to make plays on the ball, which also maybe might go towards the turnover plays a little bit.
Yeah. And that's something you just have to, again, you need to realize what you're trying to attempt here.
Well, I think that's also fundamentals. You talked about the base with the legs and stuff with the outside
100%.
throws, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many times when I know that these quarterbacks go back into the meeting room after a game and they can tell you the throw that they like the best. They'll tell you that throw on third down or that throw on first down in the second quarter might have been my best throw of the game. They know it. They're also going to tell you the worst throw of the game. That pick that I threw in the fourth quarter with 2 minutes left, I should have never done it. These are just experience that you talk about. They're growing pains. They're what happens when you have a young quarterback and a young team, and this is how you improve. And it's a shame that I get the whole preseason thing because I feel like this is such a young football team. It would have been good to have a nice preseason and get some of these guys some experience. But I get the whole gist of what happened. But it is kind of, these guys are going to learn on the run. They're going to learn the game of football, the young guys with full go. It counts. The first game counts now. You don't get 4 that don't.
Yeah, no question about it. All right, Jeff, let's get to the turnovers, and then we'll do conclusions, and we'll wrap up. I know we're long, folks, but we did all the work on this. I want to make sure we get all the information in. I appreciate you sticking with us. Turnover-worthy plays, Jeff. According to Pro Football Focus, Jones had 31 turnover plays in 2019. That was the third most in the NFL. 18 fumbles for Daniel Jones. Now, here's the key here. As I mentioned, Pro Football Focus will categorize plays. Were they turnover-worthy for Jones? Out of those 18 fumbles, PFF said 8 of them were not Jones's fault. I went back, I looked at all the plays. Those were plays where there was either a jailbreak, right, and he had no chance to get rid of the ball on time, and something happened. He was hit as he threw, where he's about to deliver the pass. Somebody knocks his hand from behind. I think we had a Shaquille Barrett play like that and a Chandler Jones play like that. And other plays where just a guy gets let loose on the blind side and he has no chance to see him coming, and the ball gets knocked out. 5 of those came from the blind side, and he was hit while he was throwing the ball. So, to me, looking at all those turnovers, Jeff, and Paul and I have talked about this a little bit, I'm not so worried about the fumbles. Of those 10 fumbles that are left, 2 are fumbled snaps, throw those out, whatever. 3 came on runs where he tried to turn a 3rd and 7 into a first down, trying to do too much at the end of the play again, trying to do too much to make a play, right? And 1 was that backwards pass against Detroit when he tried to throw the swing pass to Saquon. He got hit. So that's kind of a freak play. So you get down to the rest. That's 4 were plays where he kind of held the ball in the pocket for too long. So if I look at the really nature of all these fumbles, the fumbles to me, Jeff, is not what worries me. I think Jones can fix this. You mentioned his weight training, his strength gets stronger, get rid of the ball quicker. You put all those things together and maybe slide instead of trying to break tackles for first downs when you run the ball. You do some small little things like that, I think these fumble numbers can go way down very quickly.
They will. And these are all coachable moments, and they'll go through every single one of them. They will go through every single one of the turnovers that Daniel Jones had in that meeting room, individual meetings. They'll go through them, and they're going to analyze it. And the one thing you do not want to do is take the aggressiveness away from Daniel Jones because he can make some plays with his feet. So you don't want to scare him into the fact of saying, you know what, listen, you get outside of that pocket and you can run, you want to slide. No, that's not it. I want you to run. I want you to make an effort to make a big play. But when the time comes, let's not try to extend that play that you just did. Let's take what you got, put it in your pocket, and you're done, right? So I think that's kind of a learning experience that goes along with the position. The fumbled snaps, that's technique fundamentals. That's just getting more snaps with the center. I don't know where those came when there was a change in the center position.
Late in the year. It was November and December against the Redskins and Eagles, if I recall.
Okay. Well, listen, again, remember this. He's still in the learning phase of being able to take that snap under center. Remember that, folks. Just because he's a quarterback and, you should be able to do it, there's no question. But there's a lot of times where, again, it's new. He pulls out of there too soon. He separates his hands underneath the center's butt, and sometimes the ball just scoots through his hands. So these are fundamental. These are fixable problems.
Yeah.
Right? They're very fixable. Now, if Daniel Jones comes out of this analysis with 13 fumbled snaps, we got a problem. We got a Dave Craig problem here, right? I mean, you talk about a guy. I played with Dave Craig, by the way. He was my quarterback in Seattle. He had the smallest hands I've ever seen in my life, and that's why he fumbled so much.
That's interesting.
I'm not worried about Daniel Jones because he's got big hands, really big.
All right, let's go to the interceptions, and I think this was a bigger issue, Jeff. He had 12 interceptions and then 9 interceptions that were dropped. One, PFF gave him 9. I thought 1 was like kind of a diving attempt by the Vikings, so I think probably 8 dropped interceptions is more realistic, but that's still 20, and that's a lot. So you take a look at the different types of plays. I talked about when they came in the games. There was really not a common thing. They were spread throughout, but probably a little bit too many early in the game and on first down. More came in zone than man, which by the nature of the defense shouldn't surprise anybody.
Yep.
And when you look at it, I think there are a lot of different reasons. There were some interceptions where, to my point earlier, he just wasn't accurate enough. Like, for example, if you remember that crossing pattern against the Redskins early in the year, he threw it behind the receiver, and the Redskins safety jumped the route. There were a couple interceptions where, with a single high safety defense, he throws deep down the sideline. The single high safety gets over there. He doesn't move him enough or hold him in the middle of the field long enough. Yep. He intercepts the ball or drops an interception. You had other plays against zone where the cornerback reads what he's going to do and jumps the route. You have other plays where there are a couple plays like the one against New England, one against the Packers where, he just makes a bad decision and a bad read. He makes a pass he shouldn't have made. So there are a lot of different reasons here for why these interceptions happened. But to me, they're plays that with more experience, reading the defense, making better decisions. And this kind of comes to the conclusion, Jeff, and I think it's a good transition as we wrap up here. The word I like to use for Daniel Jones and evaluating his rookie season and going into his second year is better risk management. And for the people that do economics, I think you understand where I'm coming from, where you have to pick your spots, right? Mm-hmm. You can't try to do too much. You have to understand what's a smart decision, what's not. Make quicker decisions, make smarter decisions. It's great to be fearless in the face of pressure and to stay in the pocket and take a hit, but if you do that too much and hold the ball too long and are oblivious to the pressure, that turns into interceptions. It's great to make a spectacular throw down the field between three guys for a touchdown, but if you get 3 of those plays, but 6 interceptions go along with it because you're trying to force things that aren't there, guess what? That's bad risk management.
Yeah.
So he needs to figure out a way to reduce his turnovers, reduce his mistakes, but don't take away so many of the great play that goes with it. And I think if he can do that as a real basic way to kind of describe his overall play, just reduce some of the bad plays without reducing as many of the great plays. If he can do that, I think he's going to have a really, really nice career. Because, Jeff, you know this. If you can make 8 spectacular plays in a game, that's great. But if you turn it over 3 times, nobody cares. It's not going to matter. You're going to lose.
Games. You're going to lose the majority of those games.
So you got to balance those two things a little bit better, I think.
And again, I just feel like, some good coaching. And what I mean by coaching, folks, when I say, I don't mean that Pat Shurmur and the staff before were not good coaches. I feel like that what I'm saying now going forward is that you have Jason Garrett, who was a coach that played the position. And I know Mark Colombo played the position, right? So these are guys that are going to be able to teach in a way that the players understand a little bit better. That's all I mean about that.
Yeah,
okay?
Jeff, to your point, I think last year's coaches did a really nice job that he played so well so early.
100%.
Yeah.
And my point is I think that it's just going to get better. And I feel like, and I said it earlier, you're so ingrained to make plays in football. You want to do well. You want to make plays, the big play, right? I'm not going to have the roaring crowds this year but my point is that you got to be able to be smart about the football. And that turnovers cost you games, just like penalties do too. So we can't afford to go on the road and turn the football over. But I do not, like you said, John, I do not want to take away your aggressiveness.
Right.
Because I feel like part of your repertoire, Daniel Jones, is that you do throw the football down the field well. You do have a good chemistry with Darius Slayton. I think that was something that really, really improved last year.
Yeah, you don't want to try to limit the turnovers to the point that he becomes Alex Smith from 2010, where he's just throwing 6-yard passes all game. You don't want that.
That's right. Yeah. No, we do not want. I don't want to see that, and I'm sure the fans don't want to see it either. And I know that Daniel Jones doesn't want to do it either. Because part of being a quarterback is being able to make a big play down the field. That just gets you and the team so excited that it's ridiculous, and you'd love to watch them.
Yeah.
And when they're successful, they're big plays, and you know what happens. The team with the big plays, when we go and do these games and we kind of break it down, and you look at week in and week out which teams made the most big plays in the game, they typically win the game.
No question about it. And Jeff, I'll end here, and I think this is to your point. So many of this in terms of making better decisions and making quicker decisions to get the ball out faster, which is another big part of this, just has to do with him seeing defenses more. Remember, he was dropped into this in week 3 last year. You get dropped in week 3, these college defenses are, basic installations for NFL defenses in like April. What these NFL defenses are showing on Sundays, and it's October and November, they're complicated. Daniel Jones probably saw some of these things for the first time in games he was playing in. So that takes time to figure out. And one thing Kevin Gilbride always said to me is that the quarterback that's able to see things quickly and slow the game down for themselves are the ones that play the best. Mm-hmm. And we saw improvement at the end of the year. I don't think he took one sack where he held the ball more than 2.5 seconds after November 10th, where you saw him making quicker decisions because he's seeing it more. Yep. And as you see this more frequently, things will slow down. His play speed goes up and the game slows down for him. And I think just experience should fix most of these things. Now, is it a guarantee that it's going to? No, there are no guarantees. Jameis Winston still has turnover issues. But that doesn't mean that that's going to be the case for Daniel Jones. So I think just experience here and seeing these things and the experience that he had in his first year will help reduce some of these issues. And I think the amount of high-level play we saw, and a good amount of it in his rookie year, tells me that elite play is there. Now, you're going to have to finesse things and improve in things and improve on the margins and do things better to get that elite play more consistently and remove the bad play that's going to make you lose football games, but it's in him. And I'd much rather have a guy where I know it's in him and I just got to figure out how to get to it most consistently than a guy where you have to coax that play out of them. And I think, for me, that's why they're at a good place with Jones. Will he get there? Who knows? We'll see. But I think it's there. They just have to figure out a way to unleash it.
Well said. I think that they will work towards those goals, and I think it's not a sprint. It's a marathon, right? It's going to eventually take time to get this through. But
this is about a 15-year player, Jeff, not a 3-4 year career.
That's right. Mm-hmm. And I think that as you move forward in your progression, I mean by progression in the years you're playing in this league, there is something to be said about the game. It does slow down. It really does. At the beginning, it's fast. The other thing to look at is at the beginning of the season, nobody really knew Daniel Jones either. So they didn't know how to play him all that well. So, he came out and played pretty well at the beginning, and then all of a sudden teams started to figure. And that's with any player, right? Because these coaches are very, very, very good.
Well, and now it's Jones' turn to adjust back to them.
100%, and I think he will. And I think when you go with Jason Garrett and Jerry Shaplinsky, his coach, and that offensive staff, they're going to put him in good positions to succeed. And it's also, you're going to have to see what kind of talent around you. Because if you don't have talent around you, you're not going to be very successful. Mm-hmm. I feel like the receiving corps, if they can stay healthy, they can spread the ball around to those guys pretty good. When we talk about how many catches all those guys are going to get, I think it's going to be fairly close to, no one's going to run away with it. It's going to be really close.
It's funny, Jeff, and I'll wrap here. A lot of the stuff that's supposed to be easier for quarterbacks, like play action under center, throwing with no pressure, right? And performing with nobody in your face, and first down passing. That's the stuff that's supposed to be easier for quarterbacks, right? And that's some of the stuff that Jones struggled at. But then you have the tough stuff, like red zone passing and third down passing and passing under pressure. And Jones is really good at those things.
You know what that tells me?
What is it? What does it tell you? You tell me.
I'll tell you exactly what it tells me. So it's just like anything, right? So when things come real easy to you, sometimes you get a little bit lackadaisical. Oh, this is easy, first down. But when things get tight and things get really tough, there's the guys that persevere and they concentrate more. So what happens is he needs to concentrate more on those easy plays that you're talking about, on first down, some of the easier throws. You need to have that type of concentration the same as you would on a 4th and 1 in the red zone to win the game. Those are the types of things you learn as a player. You really do as you go forward.
And it all comes with experience, and the more he plays, the better he's going to get. Jeff, I know we went really long. I hope I didn't kill you on your schedule. I had a lot of fun, and I thought it was very informative.
No, it was great, and I love talking about it. Listen, we want to see him do well, and I think now we get a little bit of an idea of kind of where he was last year and the things that he needs to work on in 2020.
Yeah, and these are things we can track now during the year,
we'll
which is great.
carefully watch these, and, listen, I think we'll talk more about it because he's going to have a game where, some of the things that we talked about today are going to come up. And we're going to easily be able to say, listen, we talked about that on BBK one day. And if you look at what he did here, it just goes to show you vice versa. It might be, can you believe how well he threw the ball for the first quarter of the season, from first down or beyond the sticks? I mean, look how much this improved. So hopefully we're talking about a lot more of that than we are that didn't improve.
No question about it. Again, thank you to Pro Football Focus for allowing me to get all this data in order to do this. It was really fun. I'll post some videos up to show some of the film of some of the stuff that I found in my big study. By the way, folks, this written document is 22 pages. It's 11,000 words. Just so people have an idea, this was my project from like July 1st to July 14th. And it was a lot of work, but I think I learned more about any player or quarterback play than I ever thought I could. So it was a lot of fun. Thanks to PFF for letting me do it. Go to pff.com. If you subscribe, you can get all these stats for yourself and check them out on your own. It's really great to see. And thank you to the Giants for letting us do this too, which was a lot of fun.